Good evening, Peter Neale here. This is the School Business Management ILM Level 6 Diploma, Unit 1, Module 2, Design for Learning. Welcome aboard. I was expecting a few more people to come. In fact, somebody else is just joining us at the moment. We'll start the preamble and see who else joins us. So Module 2, Design for Learning. This will take about 30 minutes. This will be a précis of the module. I'm very hopeful that you've read it already, particularly if your project is related to this. But this will be a reminder for you, and you'll have a chance to ask questions as we go along. In alphabetical order, there are now 6 of us all together. I'm going to unmute you in turn to say hello, to check that you can hear me and that you can see what I can see. If you can't hear me, please type a question to highlight this to me now, so that we can have a conversation by typing and me reading things out. So Annette, good evening. Are you there?
I am.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Well done. I'm going to mute you again now, just for now.
Hello.
Good evening, Dawn. Are you there?
Hello, Peter. I am. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Always a little bit nervous about this type of thing because the technology usually lets me down, but very well, thanks. Are you okay?
I'm fine, thank you.
Right, I'm going to switch you off for now. Hello, is Di there?
Hi, Peter.
Hello, you sounded like you were coming from a vortex from the other side of the universe there.
No, I'm definitely just here.
Oh, well done. I'm delighted to hear you are. Thank you very much, Di. Hello, Maxine. Are you there?
Yes, I am, yeah.
Hello, you sound very distant indeed.
All right.
Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Oh, brilliant. Welcome aboard. Rachel, are you there?
Hi, Peter. Yes, I'm here. Hi, everyone.
Oh, hello. You sound very loud and clear. Welcome aboard.
Oh.
And this should be Susan. Susan, can you hear me?
Everyone. Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. So there are 7 of us all together at the moment. 16 people actually registered for tonight, so we'll see whether they come and join us. Otherwise, as before, we're recording this and I'll put it up on YouTube later. So at least the technical side seems to be a lot more successful than it was last time we attempted this, so brilliant, and I'm delighted that you're able to join me. This page is designed to frighten you to death, but hopefully you're already some way towards thinking about your assessment with that horrible deadline, and it's 2 months away, but it's only with proper planning and preparation that you'll meet that without burning a lot of midnight oil on the Friday night, the 29th. You'll see in brackets the evaluation planning checklist should have been submitted by Saturday, and most of you have done that. So thank you very much for doing that, and hopefully you're now well on the way to thinking about what you're going to be doing. So you're conducting an evaluation of an aspect of your school's resources for learning and producing a 5,000 word written report, and you'll see from the little time scale down below, in February and in March we are looking online. Well, we would be if it was working. Self-study, that's the most important part. The activities and tasks are provided with the materials. The reading is what I will keep on stressing, because the reading informs everything that you do. And I'm still awaiting the group tutorials in terms of the discussion boards online, but I am promised that something's going to happen, but it hasn't happened yet. So we're at the planning process, but we're nearing the end of February. Then we've got the evaluation process in March and the reporting process in April. And the planning, it's really all, for me, it's all about the reading that you do. And we'll look at this in more depth later on. but the reading that you do will inform any questions that you wish to ask in your surveys. It'll inform what you're looking for if you're observing something. It'll inform any interviews that you hold. So the reading is vital. And I can't stress that enough. Certainly at this level 6, what you can learn academically will help you every step of the way, and the more you understand on your topic, the better it'll be for you. This is just looking into the question in a bit more depth, and what we're going to be looking at tonight is the first part of this. You will have chosen your area to evaluate already, and tonight we're going to be looking at the use of learning space or learning technology. At other times we'll be looking at IT, and we'll be looking at deployment of learning support staff, but tonight's all about learning space. You'll find that on a lot of the slides that I put up down at the bottom, that I'll tell you where the quote is from. So this quote, which we'll look at in a moment, from the interestingly named Barrett and Zhang, you can find it in your level 6 unit 1 module 2 guide on page 7. That's what that little bit of code at the bottom means, and you'll find that at the bottom of many of these pages, so it might help you signpost your way forward. So considerable evidence shows that there's an explicit relationship between the physical characteristics of school buildings and the spaces within them and educational outcomes. So basically, if we're in a wonderful environment, we'll learn more, or if we're in a suitable environment, and hopefully gone are the days, or going are the days, with the old freezing cold school buildings with rain dripping through a hole in the window or something like that, although they do still exist, because the capital investment programs of the last 15 years or so are pretty well dried up now, so you might still be sitting in somewhere at school that really isn't fit for purpose. But what we're going to be looking at is how learning can be enhanced by wonderful design, and these are the objectives of today's session. It is going to be a précis, a hop, skip and a jump through it, really, just to remind you about what you've read. And what I would encourage you to do is type something in the questions section, or raise your hand and I will unmute you, and as we go along we can answer questions. There are actually now 12 of us here, which is brilliant, but I won't be unmuting everybody else, but please raise your hand if you want to say something or type something in the questions page. I'll read out the question and do my level best to answer you. Right, so the importance of the learning environment. And as we say, increasing links are being made between the design of learning spaces and educational attainment, attitudes and behaviour. And you'll see another quote there. And when the documents refer to particular texts, if this is your area of interest, I really would recommend digging out the text and having a look at it and seeing from there what you can learn and where you can go from there. You know, it's a journey of discovery, really, and we're just pointing you in the right direction, and the rest is up to you. So, recent research, and you'll find a lot of research that this course provides for you from the Building Schools for the Future era, from the early 2000s, but this is something a bit more modern, where Barrett et al., and that's a little bit of Latin for you, found that a learning environment can influence learner attainment by as much as 16%. You'll see from the from the module documents that there's a lot of detail behind this. 16% isn't a figure that's just plucked out of the air, but they identify 3 areas of focus, 3 different concepts within building design that really help. Naturalness relates to light, temperature, air quality, flexibility and colour of buildings. Individualization, it's easy for me to say, relates to how well the learning space meets the needs of learners, and stimulation relates to how exciting and vibrant the learning space is. And we'll see when we go along that different types of learners or different types of age groups require different types of learning environments. So actually, you can see I skipped 2 there. So education has been transformed in recent years by the integration of ICT, and you'll have seen significant investment over the last 15 years or so in all schools, or every school have got ICT. So learning spaces need to be adapted to facilitate this approach to learning. So it's not just about putting a square building up and hoping for the best. We have to actually have something that's adaptable to modern technology. And okay, we've got ICT now, but we started with great big PCs. A lot of people have got laptops or tablets or handheld devices, and the march of technology is much faster than the speed that people can put buildings up, simply because of practical financial reasons. So whenever you're involved in a design project, which doesn't come along that often in your career, you have to really give a lot of thought to it. What I would say, in my experience, is the school that I'm working in now in Wolverhampton, I've only been there since June, and it had a partial building schools for the future refurbishment prior to my arrival. And talking to a lot of the teachers and staff who were there, they just weren't consulted in the process, that it was imposed by the local authority and by different partnerships who had the best interests of everybody at heart, but it isn't particularly fit for purpose, and they've spent millions of pounds, and you just wonder, well, perhaps they would have been better off spending them on something else. So here are some more concepts for you. Heppel et al. Different types of schools that don't fit the bricks and mortar approach that we've heard of up to now. In the virtual school, there's no physical space at all because learners are based at home. Does that sound familiar? Perhaps not, I don't know. In the dissolve school, it's much more like a university campus in the middle of a city. I took my daughter to Liverpool, John Moores University, at the beginning of last week for an interview. That's very much a dissolved idea with different specialised campuses in different parts of the city. Don't tend to find that with secondary or primary schools, but it certainly works in the higher education sector. With the extended school, the majority of life is spent on the campus, so it's very much community focused, community learning. And then the fortress school is almost shutting the community out, and increasingly, because of safety concerns, a lot of schools are becoming fortresses, particularly in the towns and cities, not perhaps so much the rural ones. But those are different areas to look at that were identified by Heppel et al. You'll come across the CABE as you go through your studying. It doesn't exist anymore, but it's related to the Design Council, and the Labour government, as part of the Building Schools for the Future programme, relied very heavily upon the research of the CABE. They were the principal movers really with the Building Schools for the Future project, and they had some wonderful ideas, but not necessarily all of them very practical. But you can see there a list of things that would be involved in good building design for inclusive community spaces, and really there's a lot of common sense in there, and they did come up with some wonderful designs. Not all of them completely practical, and not all of them came to fruition, but I believe very much in collaboration, and to my mind the wonderful designers should involve the people who are actually going to use them a lot more than they do. All right, please forgive me, I'm pressing all different buttons. I'm trying to pat my head and run my tummy at the same time to keep all of this working. Learning design is not the same as school design, so we touched on that earlier, in that you're stuck with your school, the shape it is, but the learning design is something within that, the spaces within the school. So you've got to consider what kinds of spaces enhance student learning. What are the design principles for the classrooms, informal spaces and online activities? Are educational issues at the centre of space planning? Well, I don't know whether that always has been the case, to be honest. And what assumptions should we challenge as we design learning spaces for the future? Well, some of you will be lucky enough to be involved in design projects going into the future. Some of you will be able to have access to capital funding. So this will apply more to some than others. But as an academic exercise, this is very, very interesting. And I can remember when I was working at my first school, and building schools for the future was on the horizon. I was commissioned, really, I was given a project by the head teacher to look at learning design and to see what wonderful things we could do with the space that we had available. And we came up with all sorts of fantastic ideas, but unfortunately I was in Shropshire at the time. Well, unfortunately I was in Shropshire, but unfortunately Shropshire, like many other local authority areas, wasn't as generously funded as some, and so building schools for the future never arrived, and they've still got their 1930s buildings. But it's wonderful to dream, and part of this project, I suppose, is you consulting with other people, learning from them, and then doing a bit of dreaming afterwards. So when you're researching good design, there are two different approaches that are mentioned by PricewaterhouseCoopers, who are a well-known firm of auditors. There's a quantitative or a qualitative approach, similar types of approaches to different research that you can do with your questionnaires or surveys. And I think you should be familiar with the difference. The quantitative is something that's much more measurable and statistical, and the qualitative is much more to do with points of view and opinions. So and then another concept for you as we whiz through module 2, passive and dynamic spaces. And this is the difference between the building and what you can do with it, really. So the passive space is the classroom with all the fixtures and fittings, the square box that it usually is, or the teaching space is something much more dynamic and flexible, something that is much more related to learning. And you could see another interestingly named author down at the bottom, Cuscorpi and Gonzalez, something else for you to look at if you're thinking of designing an indoor or an outdoor space. What type of research has there been into the benefits, and what links are there between design and outcomes, and often outcomes are measured obviously in pupil attainment. I said earlier that there are different types of design for different age groups, and here we have the early years and primary design, where small amounts of intense colour focus attention. Not sure whether that's true of that picture, but if you work in a primary school, you will find that there are more primary colours, much brighter, and it says there layout, colour, light, texture, and the use of natural materials can make a big difference to learning experiences for younger children. And you'll see there are different types of environments for different age groups. So, okay, these are quite grand designs, certainly the one on the left. The one on the right you may see in a modern secondary school much more. But layout and flow, movement and space, those things to think about, and to make it a very much a working, convivial environment. And and further education was involved on the secondary page as well. So here's some areas to think about with regard to space. And really a lot of these things should be fairly self-explanatory. Flexibility, comfort, sensory stimulation, and remember with that also the requirements of Disability Discrimination Act, where you have to have certain contrasting colours so that partially sighted people can make their way around the building. Technology, which we mentioned, and is always subject to change, and a learner-centric focus. The needs of learners and the purpose of learning should be the primary focus when thinking about design, which I wholeheartedly agree with. If you are lucky enough to be involved in a building project, there are many issues to consider. Some of them statutory and legal, others to do with price and how much money you've got, and of course others to do with what is actually going to take place in the building. It's quite tempting for a designer to do everything for you and tell you what you're having, but I think that you as a business manager are really well placed to be able to interpret what the designer is saying and interpret what the teaching staff or the other staff are saying and the students, and actually come up with something that's really worthwhile. So obviously you're very closely involved with how the scheme will be financed, how long is the building going to be up for, and then, well, running costs. We'll talk about private finance initiatives soon, but the costs could be huge if you're not careful. Cost of demolition work, knocking down your existing building, and of course all the work that you have to do to make sure that education can be maintained at your establishment while the building work is going on. And then you'll see the other fees and things to think about lower down than that. Different types of procurement, some more interesting than others. Traditional procurement is quite simply going out to tender, finding the best builder and getting it put up. For small and medium-sized projects, this is probably the most common still. You might commission some consultants to prepare designs and specifications, and then you'll engage some contractors after you've gone out to tender. With design and build, and I was actually involved in a design and build project for a sports hall, and it worked really well. After going through the initial enlistment process, we found a local firm of contractors, and they offered the design and build solution. They very closely involved us, and actually the whole project came in much cheaper, and it was built much more quickly than it would have been by a traditional procurement route. But you are very much beholden to that company, and you have to obviously find somebody who's suitable and very high quality. The public-private partnerships. I was one Friday afternoon, I was in a meeting with the head of PE at my school in North Shropshire, the second school that I worked at, and I got a phone call on my mobile phone. I have no idea how he got the number, but it was the head of education premises at the local authority. It was probably 3:30 on a Friday afternoon. He called me to say that we had the opportunity to have a PFI new build, public finance initiative. He was going to send me an email with all the details, but basically we had to make our minds up by Monday morning, and we would have no say in the choice of a company that built it. We'd have no say in the design, and we would have to use the companies that were recommended to us afterwards. So we'd have to, for all our services, we would have to stay with the one company for a period of 25 years. When he sent me the details through, we worked out it would cost us in the region of £500,000 a year, and to have no say in anything, we very politely turned it down. You hear with hospitals and PFI projects of the huge costs involved, and so I am very cynical about those arrangements. You might have very good experiences of them, but I would run a mile in the opposite direction if I was offered one again. And then partnership is much, I suppose, it's the ideal method where you're working very closely with the designers, the builders, all together. So those are 4 different options available for procurement, and there are some considerations to make. And I think the planning stage is so important. You've got to plan everything correctly before you start digging into the ground. So that is the fastest possible rush through module 2. Clearly I'm not a teacher, I'm a school business manager, and this is really just to remind you and to point you in the right directions for different things, but the focus must be upon your assessment. We've looked at this screen before. I just wanted to frighten you again, or just to see whether you're still awake. Saturday the 30th of April. Please do little and often. Please find time in your life to plan regularly, to read. All of you will have different support structures at home. All of you will have different work-life balances. Some head teachers are generous enough to give you time during the working week. Others are not so generous. Please find time to get into a rhythm, into a routine, and to be disciplined, to get the reading done, your research done, to if you're going to be writing a questionnaire, start thinking about how that might look. Any survey questions you might ask, who you're going to interview, who you're going to observe, how will the people feel that you're observing? Will they feel threatened by you? Just try and formulate everything and get your thoughts down on paper. At this stage, it's just like we were talking before with building with a building project. The better your planning and preparation, the better the outcome will be. And I think I can't teach you to be disciplined. All I can do is recommend that you don't leave everything to the last minute. And some of you might have always done that throughout all of your studies, but I really, at this level, 5,000 words in the first module, the first unit, I really don't recommend doing it that way. I've put this slide up simply because it shows you or it signposts you towards different areas where you might choose to do some further reading. This is from the Module 2 booklet, and it shows in the Harvard format all the different publications that the course recommends you have a look. Read the titles, decide which ones you think are the most interesting. A Google Scholar search will reveal many of them, or just an ordinary Google search. A lot of these documents are free. The vast majority are, or you might be able to borrow something from a library, or there's all sorts of different online resources. Don't worry if you can't find every single item on there. Don't even try to. Go for the most interesting ones. And then there's the skill to reading articles. If they're academic journals, they often tell you at the start what they're going to tell you. There's an abstract, so read that. If it's still relevant, read just the introduction